Welcome back, my fellow knowledge seekers. Today, we are going to dive into the fascinating world of the Fair Credit Debt Collection Act. Now, I know what you're thinking: debt collection may not sound like the most exciting topic, but trust me, this act has some incredibly important implications for protecting consumers' rights and maintaining fairness in the debt collection process. So, buckle up and get ready to learn. First things first, let's talk about what the Fair Credit Debt Collection Act actually is. It is a federal law that was enacted in 1977 with the primary goal of curbing abusive practices by debt collectors. Essentially, it sets certain standards that debt collectors must adhere to when attempting to collect debts from consumers. One of the key provisions of this act is that it establishes the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA. The FDCPA outlines specific rules and regulations that debt collectors must follow. These rules are designed to protect consumers from harassment, unfair practices, and deception. Under the FDCPA, debt collectors cannot engage in activities such as contacting consumers at unreasonable hours, using abusive language, or making false statements about the debt. Now, you might be wondering, who exactly is considered a debt collector under the Act? Well, the definition is quite broad and encompasses any person or entity whose regular business involves collecting debts owed to others. This includes third-party collection agencies, attorneys who regularly engage in debt collection, and even companies that purchase defaulted debts. It's important to note that the Act applies to third-party debt collectors and not to creditors themselves. However, some states have enacted similar laws that apply to creditors, so it's worth checking your state's specific regulations if you find yourself dealing with a creditor's collection practices. Now, let's delve into some of the specific provisions outlined in the Fair Credit Debt Collection Act. One important aspect of the Act is that it requires debt collectors to provide consumers with written validation notices within 5 days of their initial communication. This notice must include information such as the amount of the debt, the name of the original creditor, and the consumer's rights to dispute the debt. This provision is crucial because it gives consumers the opportunity to verify the legitimacy of the debt and ensures that they are not being targeted by scammers or falsely accused of owing money. It also allows consumers to exercise their right to dispute the debt if they believe it is inaccurate or if they have already paid it off. Another significant provision of the Act is that it grants consumers the right to request that debt collectors cease communication. If a consumer sends a written request to a debt collector demanding that they stop contacting them, the debt collector must comply. However, it's important to note that this does not absolve the consumer of their debt. It simply restricts how the debt collector can communicate with them. Additionally, the Act prohibits debt collectors from using deceptive or misleading practices to collect debts. They cannot, for example, falsely represent the amount owed or threaten legal action that they cannot or do not intend to take. This protects consumers from unwarranted stress and ensures that debt collectors do not resort to intimidation tactics to collect money. In recent years, there has been an increase in debt collection through electronic communication, such as emails and text messages. The Fair Credit Debt Collection Act recognizes this shift and includes provisions that govern these modern forms of communication. Debt collectors are prohibited from using these mediums to harass or annoy consumers, and they must provide an opt-out mechanism for electronic communications. Now, let's talk about the consequences for debt collectors who violate the Act. The Act allows consumers to sue debt collectors who engage in prohibited practices and seek damages for any harm caused. If a consumer is successful in their lawsuit, they may be entitled to not only actual damages but also additional statutory damages, attorney's fees, and court costs. In addition to individual lawsuits, government agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, have the authority to take legal action against debt collectors who violate the Act. These agencies can impose fines and penalties on violators, ensuring that there are repercussions for those who flout the law. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering how you can protect yourselves from unfair debt collection practices. Well, the first step is to know your rights under the Fair Credit Debt Collection Act. Familiarize yourself with the specific provisions and understand what debt collectors can and cannot do. If you believe that a debt collector has violated the Act, document the interactions and gather any evidence that supports your claim. This will be crucial if you decide to take legal action or file a complaint with a government agency. It's also important to be vigilant and watch out for potential scammers. If you receive a collection call or notice about a debt that you do not recognize, ask for detailed information and verify its legitimacy. Do not disclose any personal or financial information until you are sure that the debt is valid and the collector is legitimate. In conclusion, the Fair Credit Debt Collection Act is an essential piece of legislation that protects consumers' rights and promotes fair practices.